Hi, my name is Tammy Greenlee, and this is Module 14, the case study. This is about Richard, who is a assistant principal, and James and David. James is a Southside kid that has been in a lot of trouble. He's the leader of that group of kids, and Richard is actually from the Southside. And then David is a kid that is basically a scholar, and he's never been in any trouble. Good kid. Um, so that's kind of the case thing. Um, so here's what I have. Richard is assistant principal, and he is going through at the beginning. He's going through the courtyard, talking to the students, building relationships, waiting on the bus 50 to come in, which is the Southside bus. He has committed himself to building relationships with the students and making a positive impact on their lives, and um, most especially with the Southside students, who he feels like, because he's from there originally, he can make a difference for them. And he's been working on building the relationships. And James, he's gotten really close to James, and was playing basketball in the afternoon after school, and all of the kids are, their grades are starting to come up a little bit, and the behavior is better, and he's feeling really good about what he's doing. So this day, he goes back to his office, and a teacher calls, and James had been called to the office, and something happened in the hallway. David was involved. Teacher saw James give David something, and David was acting really nervous. So the teacher was concerned, called Richard, and that's where this is what the case study is about. So initially, let me just go back to the beginning here. Academic success and personal well-being. Richard definitely has that going on for the students. He's building relationships, and because of that, because of the positive relationships that he's building, he saw better behavior and better grades from these Southside kids that they hadn't seen before. College, careers, and life. He's on track with that as well. Richard was thinking of what's best for the students. He was also watching out for their future the best that he could. He wanted to make a difference in the kids' lives, a positive difference. And even later on in the case study, he actually takes a negative mark in his file rather than put a kid, recommend a kid for detention, or basically for detention that would have affected him, because he would have gone to juvenile detention, and it just wouldn't have been a good thing. And David had never, ever been in trouble before, and he knew it was wrong. So he didn't do it, even though it was protocol. That was thinking of what was the best for students and doing it. So collaborative effort, I like this one. I heard a long time ago, somebody said it takes a village to raise a child, and I believe that. It takes, teachers, staff, administration, community, parents. It takes lots of people, trying to put positive into the kids' lives, and it may not, there may be only one or two people that really click, with the student, and really get them changing. But if there's a lot of positive going on, it's just going to be, all it can be is a good thing. Richard modeled the right behavior, but he may have made a poor decision in bringing a cop into the room with the boys initially, before he really knew what was going on. And especially since David had never been in trouble before and was on the road to go to college, this could have affected him for the rest of his life. So when kids' futures are involved, you always want to think first about what the consequences could be. What if it was this? What would the consequences be? If it was this, what would the consequences be? And try to make a decision based on the 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 least amount of negative happening, um, least amount of people getting hurt. Um, so when a kid's future is involved, like David could have been affected very, very negatively by Richard's decision for the rest of his life. And he was affected negatively, but then when Richard decided not to send in that paperwork, that kind of took away some of that negative effect. It could have been a lot worse. And so when ethics are breached, then they must be corrected immediately as soon as you realize. Obviously, this was unintentional and it was questionable, but everything possible needs to be done to correct the situation. And it was done by Richard after the fact. Support learning and development. He does both of those things. You can do so much just with building relationships and modeling the correct behavior, positive behavior. So in building those positive relationships, Richard is supporting learning and development. Challenging and supportive conditions. He also was very good at this. Richard builds the positive relationships again with the students, then challenges them to do better by example. With his positive thinking and genuine caring, the kids are a lot more likely to want to do better, maybe to please him, but eventually it will be for themselves and the people around them, hopefully. Supporting teachers. Richard did this by immediately when he got the call that something had happened in the hallway. He got David down there. James was already headed there. And then, took them right in and addressed the situation right away with the cop in the room. Managing resources and operations. This was shown by he had resources to a cop. He called him in and told him what was going on, what he knew, and then he went into the room with the kids and they figured out exactly what had happened. And he was really kind of proud because James, even though he was the bad guy in the whole thing, he did admit to what he did and took the blame away from David, which was the right thing for him to do. So Richard was proud of him for doing that, but it still didn't change the fact that he was going to be punished for carrying the weapon. In reflection, when Richard reflected on the decisions that he had made, he wished he may have done things a little differently, maybe not get the officer involved until he knew the whole story or until he had given the kids at least a chance to come clean and to tell him what had really happened. So that was his review, and he tried to correct what he could of the decision that he wished he wouldn't have made. In summary, this case study was difficult, but upon reflection, some of the decisions that were made, the majority of them that were made, not all of them, but the majority were by the book. It's what protocol is for this situation, or but there were some ethical issues as well that that had to be addressed. Sometimes there are always going to be times when there's like an exception to the rule, an exception to protocol, and you've got to really be you've got to be careful about making that exception. But in this case, I really think that an exception should have been made early on, but it was made later on. Richard did not follow protocol in not turning in the paperwork for David, but in doing that, he did the right thing for David, because David had never been in trouble. So that's just something that I feel like as you get more, as you are a leader for longer, and as you're learning and seeing more situations, then you're going to have a better idea immediately what to do in a situation. But I think it's always a good idea to take a step back and figure out what the consequences could possibly be, so you can make the best decision and the most educated decision possible. After reading this case study, I know that I will be more careful in weighing the consequences of my decisions before I make the decision, and try to go with a decision that will hurt the least amount of people, or that could possibly hurt. Hopefully, it won't hurt anybody. Knowing what I do about the situation, I know that I would have waited to get the cop involved until I had given the kids a chance to come clean, or until I knew a little bit more about what had happened. But in saying that, it's hard to know what to do if you don't know what happened. One thing may seem like the best thing, but it could be something totally different that is actually the best thing. So when we take that, we take 10 minutes or whatever to just figure out what the most ethical and the best thing is. That's where we're going to make the best decisions. Okay, so that's all I have for you, and I hope you have a great Christmas and New Year, and I hope that next semester goes awesomely. Have a great night. Thank you.